Hey guys, in today's video, let's go through what I believe would have occurred if Aragorn was killed by Lurtz in the Fellowship of the Ring. So our timeline begins as Boromir has suffered 3 arrows from the captain of Saruman's army, Lurtz. Being mortally wounded, Aragorn attacks Lurtz before the assassination can be completed. After a lengthy clash, the Dunedain warrior quickly cuts off Lurtz's arm and stabs him in the abdomen. However, in this alternate timeline, we are going to go through the scenario of what if the captain of Saruman, in a last-ditch attempt, thrust his weapon into Aragorn's neck, leaving the Uruk-hai, the steward prince of Gondor, and the destined king of Gondor in a pool of their own blood upon the fields of Amon Hen. Shortly after, Legolas and Gimli arrive onto the scene. The elf runs to the side of Aragorn to find the ranger lifeless, and Gimli to Boromir, who muttered,
"They took the little ones,"
before passing away. Gimli understood that he was referencing to Merry and Pippin. The elf and the dwarf were speechless, as they only now had each other. In a matter of days, they had lost their 2 leaders, Gandalf, followed by Aragorn, and Boromir, who was a fierce warrior. The elf and the dwarf stood silent, speechless, bewildered at their situation, unable to focus. Legolas spoke to Gimli, and they arranged the funeral for the 2 rangers, delivering them to the Falls of Rados within the same boat, so that they may be sent back to their traditional realm of Gondor. After saying goodbye to their dear fellowship companions, Legolas and Gimli had a choice: to follow Frodo and Sam into Mordor, or to track the Uruks who took Merry and Pippin captive. They thought about their quest and the promise they made Frodo in Rivendell.
"And you have my bow."
and my axe.
Remorsefully, Legolas and Gimli left Merry and Pippin to torment and death, preparing to sail across the Underwind into the borders of Mordor. Travelling to the east into the Land of Shadow, Legolas and Gimli reached the eastern shore and began climbing the slopes. They were extremely mournful for their fallen friends, as well as the captive halflings. Yet they knew they had to muster on. Legolas would climb the slopes ahead of his friend Gimli, as he was much lighter and had keen eyes that could examine the lands of Mordor for miles to spot the halflings. However, they were nowhere to be seen. On the 3rd day of their journey, they heard nearby screams. Loud shrieks were echoing throughout the valley. Legolas knew that voice. He pondered upon it. It was familiar to him. "It's Gollum," he whispered to Gimli, his eyes fixed towards the distant sounds of the loud echoes. Commanding Gimli to follow him, the elf and the dwarf were on the move. Coming closer and closer to Frodo and Sam, Legolas finally spots the halflings on the open fields of the dead marshes. Travelling a further 2 miles, they finally catch up to the hobbits and Gollum. The halflings are overjoyed at seeing their fellowship companions. It had only been 4 days since Frodo and Sam had departed the fellowship. However, it had felt like months since their parting. After their short-lived and joyous reunion, Legolas angrily turned to Gollum. "Foul creature who escaped our dungeons in Mirkwood, where are you taking them? What are your evil intentions this time?" Gollum was quivering and hesitant to speak. Legolas had his 2 elven daggers withdrawn before Frodo stepped in front of the creature in a protective manner. "He is our guide and companion. He swore an oath to lead us to Mordor, and that is where he is taking us." Legolas was filled with despair. As his face was lowered, he only now began to notice the dead elves and men in the fields where once a great war took place. His mind for a brief second lingered upon that war, which his grandfather Odofor participated and perished within. Snapping back to reality, he cried, "Gollum cannot be trusted." "Can you lead the way to Mordor?" Baggins responded. Legolas, with his head still facing down, pessimistically observed the cowering Gollum. Turning his head up back to Frodo, "So be it." he cautiously uttered. As they began following Gollum through the secret passages of the dead marshes, Legolas threatened Gollum with an arrow in between his eyes if he so much as caused a concern to the company. And as they were travelling eastwards towards the Black Gate, Gimli and Legolas disputed this idea, claiming that it was hopeless. The company then proceeded to travel to the path of the Morgul Vale, towards the winding stairs. As much as Legolas and Gimli detested the path which led to Cirith Ungol, it really was the only reasonable way into Mordor. Crossing the dead marshes, the company began travelling south to Minas Morgul. Passing near the borders of Gondor, they encounter Faramir, captain of the White Tower. However, with Legolas and Gimli in the timeline, they pass through Amon Hen untroubled, making allies with Faramir who supports their quest. The company gain provisions such as water, food, and supplementary arrows for Legolas's quiver. Their voyage is relatively untroubled, with the addition of the experienced elf and dwarf. That is until they arrive at the lair of the Nazgul. The Great Stair is truly staggering. Gimli is the most troubled at the task due to his heavy body mass, armor, and axe. To go on, he must abandon these items. Even then, the errand of the climb was still incredibly daunting and dangerous. Gollum told his companions that this was the only way to reach Mount Doom. It was at this moment, the green beam of Minas Morgul shot through the sky like a concentrated missile, and an astounding army of orcs are released from the Morgul, marching towards Gondor for war. Legolas turned to Gimli grimly, and they had the most difficult of choices to make. They gazed at the hobbits and pondered. That's where we'll leave part 1, and if you enjoyed this story, leave a like and I'll make a part 2 if this video reaches 100 likes, and I'd love your help in where the story goes from here. It can go in one of two directions. Legolas and Gimli rush to Gondor to warn them of the incoming battle of their lifetime, or to continue on with Frodo and Sam to ensure the destruction of the ring. Let me know in the comments below where you think the story should lead, and remember to like this video if you want to see part 2. Thank you wonderful people for sticking around to the end. And as always, my Middle-earth friends, Hanalei for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode of Lord of the Rings Theory.
Embrace the power of the ring, or embrace your own destruction.
Renew.